Would any of you be prepared to be chair? Would we like any nominations? Councillor Bacon, are you happy to chair this meeting?
I'm happy, thank you.
Thank you very much, in which case I'll hand over to you.
You could hear the joy in my voice, couldn't you? Welcome everyone. So I've only found out that our usual chair, Darryl, was not going to attend about 3 minutes ago. So excuse me if I'm a little behind on my procedure, because I'm just reminding myself as I would do as a member of the committee. But welcome to this meeting of the licensing subcommittee. We have around the table Kevin and Andrea, who are from the licensing department, the three councillors who are hearing the application, Councillor Jarman, Councillor Best and myself, Councillor Bacon. Jodie is our lawyer, who will be advising on legal matters, obviously, and Sarah from Democratic Services will be keeping the minutes, etc. I'm assuming you're from Tesco, the applicants. Could you introduce yourselves to the panel, please?
Hi, I'm Hardish Purwell and I'm the licensing manager for Tesco's.
Hi, I'm Andrew Kirk and I'm store manager at Wootton.
Thank you very much. I should, I believe, just mention the fire procedure. There are no planned fire drills, so if you hear an alarm, leave the building as quickly as you safely can do so, through those doors and down the steps, which will be to your left. And then you can't use the lift, and the car park at the back is the assembly area. We have a couple of formal matters that need to be dealt with before we move to the substantive hearing. Firstly, we have minutes of the last subcommittee, which took place on the 22nd of July, at which myself and Councillor Jarman were present. I've briefly looked through those. Are you happy, Chris?
Yes, so I formally propose in the second reading.
I'm happy to do that. Obviously, Michael, you can't say one way or the other. So I assume that means I need to sign those quickly. There we go. Do any members of the panel have any declarations of interest? I suppose we all shop at Tesco occasionally, but I don't think that gets to that level. Any matters of urgent business need to be mentioned? In that case, we can move to the substantive business of the day. The procedure, I should have said, I don't know if you've received a copy of the procedure. We will be following that. I certainly will, because I'm reminding myself as we go along. But assuming everyone is familiar with that procedure, we will move then to item 3 on that procedure and the report of the licensing officer.
This application for a premises licence is made by Tesco Stores Limited for a new store to be located at 36 High Street, Newport. The application was made on the 29th of July and the licence for activities sought are the provision of late night refreshment and the supply of alcohol for consumption off the premises during their proposed opening hours of 6 AM to midnight each day. No representations were made during the consultation period by any of the responsible authorities, but one representation was made by another person which remains outstanding. Mr. Baker states that bad behaviour in Newport has led to police action on several occasions, and it is his view that to grant this application and allow alcohol to be sold between 6 AM and midnight will fuel public disorder. Mr. Baker was contacted via email following the consultation and advised that the application had been discussed with an officer from the police licensing team. The outcome of this discussion was that it is the police view that the measures being proposed by the applicant in relation to the upholding of the licensing objectives are sufficient and proportionate, and as the agency concerned primarily with the crime and disorder objective, they do not consider any additional measures necessary. Mr. Baker was also provided with a copy of the applicant's operating schedule so he could see the measures being proposed in relation to each of the licensing objectives, but this has not alleviated his concerns and his representation remains. Communications between the licensing department and Mr. Baker can be found at Appendix 4, and it is this representation that members are being asked to consider today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unless my fellow members have any questions, which would be unusual at this stage, I'll ask us to move to section 4 for the applicants to present their case.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for hearing this application for a new store that we're looking to open around Easter 2023. If I tell you a little bit about Tesco, we've got about 2,800 stores across the UK, and we have about 300,000 colleagues that work for Tesco. We've got two formats, so we have a large format, and an example of that would be our Ride Extra store, and then we've got our convenience format, which is all the smaller stores that you'll also see on the island. And this is a convenience store, so it's very much about top-up shops. It'll have a very limited range, but a targeted range to the needs of the local community. Alcohol's a small but an important part of our business. And there will only be a small number of alcohol lines, as you would see in a typical express. We already operate a number of stores on the island, and I manage all of the compliance issues around licensing for Tesco's. And I don't have any issues that they don't come up on the island. The licensing officers don't speak to me about any of the issues that have come up. In this store, we'll have about 20 colleagues and 3 managers, and that will be a mixture of part-time and full-time, a full-time team. But the managers, all 3 managers, will be, as well as a store manager, will be full-time. The roles will be for people in the local community, and it'll be advertised to them first, and there'll be a special barcode that they can use to say that they're in the local area. So we will take some experienced members from our existing stores that may want to move over, but the remainder will come from the local community. And recruitment will start about 4 to 6 weeks before the store opens. And Andy Cook has been he's worked for Tesco's for 25 years, and he's been a store manager for 9 years, again on the island. So your whole Tesco career has kind of been on the island. So again, he's available if you have any questions that you want to ask about how our stores operate. If I kind of just talk you through some of our kind of good neighbour policies, you know, Andy takes pride in being a good neighbour in and around his store, as well as kind of donating things for local charities and supporting local schools. Generally, on the Isle of Wight, we've awarded almost £200,000 to 86 projects through our Tesco community grants. And we've also donated 231,000 meals through our community food connection. And some of those business or the charities that have kind of benefited have been the Cancer Trust, carers, the Newport Church of England Primary School, as well as like Independence Arts and Pan Together. So all different charities that are kind of based in Newport that have benefited from that. We're also happy to join any local groups, any resident associations or business groups as and when the need requires. In terms of how we work with the police, if there are any issues, then we work really well in the community to support the police in any issues that they may have. So, for example, things that we've done in other areas is if there's particular people that are causing problems in the local community, we just won't serve them any alcohol at any time. Whether they come in, we'll serve them food, but we just won't serve them any alcohol. We've also done some self-exclusion programs. So where people feel that they have a problem with alcohol, we will, and they come in and say, please don't sell it to us. We'll make sure we don't sell that individual any alcohol. And often there's a program that kind of sits behind it where we'll phone somebody to say this person needs a bit more support because they've tried to come in to buy alcohol again. And again, should any issues arise, we'll work closely with the local residents or the police to kind of support the community to put them right. In terms of how we sell alcohol responsibly, we've got a good relationship with the statutory authorities. I also chair a retail alcohol standards group, which looks at best practice in the industry. So I work alongside other retailers and just make sure that we've got the best practice in how we sell alcohol. That will also include things like free posters that are available on that website that other smaller shops can use free of charge. And we'll work with small independent retailers to support them in their training. So, for example, if our Think 25 training is required by other smaller retailers, we're happy to host those in our stores and have those smaller retailers in, and we can run through our age-restricted sales programme with them. We also work with community alcohol partnerships, so if there's particular areas that have got a problem with underage drinking, there's a programme that we work with that brings partner groups together to make sure that underage sales aren't happening, and also there's diversionary activities for those young people to do instead of, you know, drinking in a park, for example. As well as kind of working with the Portman Group and Drink Aware. We also have close links with the Home Office and the Department of Health and kind of involved in some of the policies that they bring out. We have a primary authority relationship with Hertfordshire, who endorse all of our practices and procedures, and we go to them for constant advice around anything that we're kind of looking to do in how we sell alcohol. As you would expect from a business like ours, we have very good training programs. It's been endorsed by the BII as what excellent looks like. So when somebody starts work with us, we do some induction training. Then there's checkout training. There's training in the beers, wines and spirits section, as well as security. And we train our teams on age-restricted sales twice a year. And we also have security training, which encourages our staff to kind of look beyond just what they're doing to see what's going on in the store as well. I've already kind of mentioned our Think 25 policy, which is really strong in all of our stores. And basically, if anybody looks under 25, we will ask them for ID. And if they can't provide ID, then we'll refuse a sale. We only accept certain types of ID, like the pass logo, passport, driving licence, and the military ID card, which have all been approved by the Home Office. Our training extends to how to spot somebody that's drunk as well, so that we don't make those sales. And that there's also training in conflict management, because when somebody comes in under the influence, you don't always know how they're going to react. We also train our teams in what to look out for with proxy sales, so that somebody over 18 who's buying alcohol for somebody under 18, again, we will stop that happening. And if a group come in, we ID everybody in the group. I guess most importantly, we empower and encourage our colleagues to make the right decisions, and we'll support them with those decisions. So we have a "you say no, we say no" policy, which means that if a colleague refuses a sale, a manager won't override that sale. That person may need a bit more training if they looked over 25, but actually what we don't do is kind of we want that colleague to have confidence in the decisions that they're making. We also have a checkout prompt, which when alcohol is scanned, the checkout freezes, and there's a prompt there with a date of birth that reminds a colleague that this is an alcoholic product and they need to check for ID and follow Think 25. We have security in this. We will have security in the store. We'll have cameras. We've got panic alarms. High value items are tagged. Spirits will be behind the counter. We have body cams in the store and headsets so that everybody can communicate really well together. And then there's also obviously a central team in the office that can support with any licensing issues. The police haven't made us aware of any issues in the area. And as I talked about our range, we've got a very limited range. We won't be selling any miniatures unless they're in gift packs and they come along with a teddy bear and a small bottle of something, for example, at Mother's Day or around Christmas. The prices are all set nationally, so there won't be any local pricing in the store. So the store won't be able to make decisions on kind of reducing a range. I guess, I thank Mr. Baker for his representation, and it's always good to know what's going on in the local community. However, I have no evidence in terms of, anything from the police or anything that we can kind of look at to kind of see whether this is a big issue. And as you're aware, the police are kind of the custodians of crime and disorder when it comes to the Licensing Act. And if they had had any issues, then they would have been in touch with me to kind of support around that. Like I said, we've got strong Think 25 policies, won't sell alcohol to somebody who is already drunk. And I guess that they would be, if we're selling alcohol to somebody, they would be the ones that would then go on to kind of cause disorder or anything kind of further along. And I know that Mrs. Buller's kind of made contact with the police around whether there was anything else that they wanted, and there wasn't anything. So I guess I've looked through the statement of licensing policy and also the section 182 guidance, and under there's not a presumption under the Act to restrict, and there should be good reason or evidence if there's going to be a restriction in hours, and that we should be granted the hours as applied for unless there's a good reason for not doing so. And I guess your legal advisor will give you advice around any of the Thwaites cases and anything else that you kind of might need legally. I guess that's it. It's been a bit of a whistle, but I hope I've given you as much information as I can. But we're open for questions if you have any others that I haven't covered.
Thank you very much indeed. That was a useful and full presentation. I will turn to my colleagues and see if there are any questions. I will have a few in a moment.
Really, my question should be directed at police licensing, but of course in the absence of any representation here. And it's covered briefly in section 38 of the report. And my question is, and you've already touched on it, is there any evidence to support what the objector said in his original objection to the application? He's saying that there's antisocial behaviour or could fuel antisocial behaviour around the town. Is there any firm evidence to support that claim?
I'm conscious this is questions for the applicant at the moment. Okay. That's a perfectly valid question, yep. But I think, Kevin, you might be able to deal with that at the next stage of the process, unless...
Apologies for jumping the gun.
Yeah. So do we have any questions for the applicants themselves? No. Yes.
Just one further question. And the operating hours from 6 to 12 midnight, originally 11, an extension to 12 midnight, is that correct? So an additional hour?
Yes, sorry.
So my question is, what's the rationale for going to 12 o'clock midnight on alcohol sales?
Could I, because I was going to ask a similar question. We've seen the hours in the application. Are those the actual intended opening hours, or will the opening hours, I assume Sunday at least, they will be less than what you applied for? What are the actual planned opening hours for the store? That's the question, really, isn't it?
At the moment, the planned opening hours are 6 till midnight. And I guess, as we'll look at footfall and all of that, and if there's not a requirement, then those hours will be reduced, I guess, in the future, which is what is how we tend to operate. We'll open to the hours that are needed in the local community, and then we'll kind of adjust them as needed.
Thank you. Well, one of my questions has now been answered. You said that the alcohol sales will be a small element of the stock that the shop carries. Can you give us a little more flavour of how many lines, how much of the shelf space it will be? How will the impression be given to the public this is an off license, or just alcohol is a very small part of the business? How would you present it?
I guess it's usually about 10% of the space. So if we've got 100 mods, which is a shelf, then we'll have 10 mods, which will also include the mods that we have behind where the spirits are going to be kept behind the checkout area. It isn't, you know, we won't have any signage around that's kind of making it so obvious that it's an off license. It's there. I mean, 95% of our sales are usually with other products. So it's not something that people go in just to buy alcohol. It is as a part of an overall, you know, they're linked to other sales. So we don't promote it as an off license. It's predominantly a grocery shop with an alcohol offering.
Okay, thank you. You referred to some elements of seasonal variation, gifts at times and so on. Of course, in June each year, Newport is the town closest to a very large event, the Isle of Wight Festival, and festival goers will be visiting the town, and alcohol is a draw for them. Will you not, as you say, be altering your pricing, your product stock holding at that time? Will you be getting in additional security when that event, or indeed other similar events that might happen, take place?
Yes, but I think Andy might be better equipped because you've been working on the island with the festival,
yeah,
to kind of talk through what we would normally do. But absolutely, if there's any special events, we look at each. You know, we're used to dealing with this across the board, like Reading Festival, etc. But Andy, do you want?
I suppose my question is, you say you don't do anything special in terms of pricing. Is that going to be correct with the festival? You won't suddenly say, hey, come to us, we've got loads of booze.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in Wootton and in Ventnor. We've never done any promotional pricing around the festival. Obviously, the demand is slightly higher, so we bring in more stock, but the actual space on the shop floor remains the same. There's sometimes a switch between sort of bottles to cans, if that's what the requirements of the site. In recent years, since they've sell alcohol on site now and you can pre-order, actually the sales have massively dropped, and it tends to be much more top-up grocery, snacks, that kind of thing, and people aren't buying from the supermarket, they're actually picking it up when they're on site. I don't know about the large retailers, but certainly even when I was in Ryde previously, the impact wasn't huge. Although it's set up for festival time, the actual impact to sales is not that great, and it's diminished over the years.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. You went through some of your safety measures, CCTV and so on. You said, I copied down the phrase, we won't serve troublemakers alcohol. There was a suggestion there that you carry some sort of database of known troublemakers. And I'm conscious the press are here and there might be an element of confidentiality, but can you help us a little with how you police check whether someone is a known troublemaker, to use your phrase?
So we don't carry a database of anything, but if the police make us aware of somebody that's gone on to cause antisocial behaviour, for example, and they say to us, don't sell alcohol to this person, then that's what we won't do that. In a community like this, you often get to know who those people are fairly quickly. And we will do this in other areas where we'll support the police, and if they ask us not to sell them, we won't.
Thank you very much. I don't know if that's prompted any other comments from my colleagues.
Just
If there's a pub watch scheme or shop watch, then we'll be a part of that local scheme, because it's part of us being, embedded into the community. Often, and again, maybe Andy can describe this better, but when when there's only 20 of you in a store, you know who those people are. And for example, in some areas where there's street drinking going on, the store manager will actually walk around the local town and know who those street drinkers are. So if they become problematic, then that's another group of people that we wouldn't sell alcohol to. It's a product we want to sell responsibly, and it's a product that needs to be drunk responsibly as well.
Thank you very much. We now move relevant authorities present case. As has been noted, none of them are here, and we note from the report that no representations have been received from any of the normal responsible authorities. However, we have got one question. I think this is the appropriate moment for it now, and Kevin, you can stand in the shoes of, I don't know if it's a police question or whatever, but Councillor Beston, perhaps we could return to your point.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pick that up. I remembered the question, Councillor Beston. I think it would be wrong of me to speak on behalf of the police. However, I'm more than happy to answer the question in relation to the licensing perspective, in the fact that there has been some antisocial behaviour in the town. I think we're all aware of that. But there is no distinct link back to any particular licensed premises, and I think that is covered in section 38 of the report. So in short, the answer is that there isn't any evidence to support those premises, and in fact, as Tesco's is a new premises, there is no link to that premises. Thank you.
Councillor Jarman, you're indicating.
The last record, which is in the document from contact with Mr. Baker, was on the 27th of August. Seems to have been quite a long period since then. Has there been any further interaction with him at all subsequent to this document being produced, or is the matter?
Well, again, we're jumping ahead a little. So I'm speaking procedure sometimes. In terms of relevant authorities, is there anything we are hampered? Well, not hampered, but because there've been no representations. But in terms of any points you might wish to put to relevant authorities, as opposed to questions about the applicant or the objector, which we'll come to in a moment, are there any other things that Mr. Winchton might be able to address?
No, just that, given that there's no authorities here.
Well, in which case we turn to the next part of the procedure, which is other persons present case, and this would be the opportunity, if the objector were present, for him to speak. Obviously, he is not here, but we have seen his original representation and the correspondence between himself and Ms. Bull. So I think this is the appropriate point to refer to Councillor Jarman's question, and indeed ask if there has been any other contact with Mr. Baker that isn't represented in the papers, so that we can be aware of that.
No, there wasn't any further notification of the hearing. I emailed him to say, you've already indicated you won't be attending the hearing, but regulations require me to send you this. There was no further information I could give him. I'd given him details of the operating schedule, assurances from the police licensing officer that, they had no concerns, but his concerns remained, and there was nothing else communication-wise to enter into.
And he didn't, did he acknowledge or not acknowledge the notification of the hearing?
Yes,
He
he
did.
acknowledged that,
Oh,
but
good.
he'd already told me that he wasn't going to attend today.
Okay, given the absence of various people today, we've gone through this quite quickly. Obviously, the remaining stages are summing up, but I perhaps should give an opportunity to the panel again, just to say, is there anything that might be counted as evidence that you wish to inquire about? in which case there are no relevant authorities to sum up. There are no other persons to sum up. The applicant, you've given us a very full presentation already. We can't take further evidence at this stage. Is there anything you would wish to add in summing up?
No, just that I hope that we've been able to demonstrate that we're an excellent operator and very keen on partnership working. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, I turn to Andrea to say, is there anything you wish to add in summing up?
Police have confirmed that they are satisfied with the control measures that are proposed, and there's no evidence to suggest that any of the other retail outlets in the town centre have any bearing on incidents of antisocial behaviour in the town. The applicant is part of a large national chain with a proven track record in staff training, and historically have not caused the Island Licensing Department any concerns in relation to the upholding of any of the licensing objectives. Section 1015 of the Section 182 guidance states that shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any time when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. And it is therefore the recommendation of the licensing department that this application should be granted in accordance with option 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes this part of the hearing. Our practice now is for the subcommittee, together with our legal advisor, to retire to arrive at a decision, and we'll get back to you very shortly. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry about the delay. And I will turn to Jodie Gibson to read the decision of the panel.
Thank you, Chair. Upon receiving the report of the licensing section, the oral evidence from the applicant, responsible authorities and other persons, and having regard to the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Isle of Wight Council's Statement of Licensing Policy 2019 to 2024, the subcommittee hereby approve the licence in accordance with the application, as per reasons given within the same report, in order to promote the licensing objectives and in accordance with the Isle of Wight Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the Section 182 guidance. In reaching the above decision, the subcommittee have had regard to the Human Rights Act 1998 and in particular Article 1 of the First Protocol, Article 8 and Article 6. The subcommittee consider this decision is proportionate and appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives under the Licensing Act 2003. There is a right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court if anyone is dissatisfied with this decision, and any appeal must be made within 21 days of the date of notification.
Thank you very much. That is our decision. That concludes the business of this hearing. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. We wish you success with the store. Now close the hearing.